Hello, hello. I'll give everyone a moment to connect to audio here. Hello and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 1297th New Social Environment. I'm Joshua, a programs associate here at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Eric Shiner, Yayoi Shionoiri, and Eugenie Tsai. And now I'll introduce today's guest and host. Eric Shiner is the president of Powerhouse Arts, a Brooklyn nonprofit supporting creative expression. He has held leadership roles at Pioneer Works, White Cube New York, and Sotheby's, and was director of the Andy Warhol Museum from 2010 to 2016. As a leading scholar on Warhol and Asian contemporary art, he has curated notable exhibitions internationally, including the Warhol Museum's Andy Warhol retrospective that traveled across Asia from 2012 to 2014. Yayoi Shionoiri is the VP of External Affairs and General Counsel at Powerhouse Arts, and is an interdisciplinary art lawyer and art historian who lives in Brooklyn. She's delighted to return to the new social environment where she's hosted before and is honored to often contribute to the Rail, including a critics page on art law and art and the law. Our host today, Eugenie Tsai, is a curator and writer based in New York. After 16 years, she stepped down from her position as the John and Barbara Vogelstein Senior Curator, Contemporary Art at the Brooklyn Museum. During those years, she shaped the contemporary collection and organized around 40 loan and collection exhibitions. These include Oscar Yi Ho, East of Sun, West of Moon in 2022 and 2023, and Kehinde Wiley, A New Republic in 2015. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass over the virtual mic to Eugenie.
Thank you, Joshua. I'm really happy to be here with Eric and Yayoi to speak about Powerhouse Arts. A few years ago, I attended an event at Powerhouse Arts. It was my first time there, and I was really blown away by that vast industrial space in which the event was held. And it seemed to be a very large building and with many things lying behind the walls. So I'm really delighted to have a conversation with Eric and Yayoi this afternoon to talk about the building, its history, and development. But before that, I'd like to speak first to both of them and have them introduce themselves and just uh, give us a little brief description of what each of you does at Powerhouse.
Absolutely. And Eugenie, thank you so much for moderating the talk today. You have always been one of my curatorial heroes, and it is a great honor to spend time in this space with you because you have always brought a level of professionalism and creativity and joy and love to curatorial practice, and you are one of the greats. So it's a
Oh,
real honor to do
thank
this
you,
with you.
Eric. I love you. I love you too.
Oh, thank you. So, I am Eric Shiner, and I have the great honor of serving as the president at Powerhouse Arts. And I've been with the organization coming up on 3 years next month, and stepped into this absolutely gorgeous and, as you noted, very large building of 170,000 square feet located on the Gowanus Canal in Gowanus, Brooklyn. And as you see here in our grand hall, which alone is 22,000 square feet with 30-foot ceilings, my team and I realized right out of the chutes that we had this incredible resource that we could utilize to fill with art and joy, and most importantly, artists. And that is what I have the great honor of doing every day, is figuring out how to best leverage this space, this architecture, by the Swiss architects Herzog and Demeron, we should make note of, to the best and highest use and advantage of artists, not only in New York, but certainly around the world. And I'll hand it over to Yayoi to tell a little bit about what she does.
Thanks so much, Eric, for that. And again, huge thanks to Brooklyn Rail for having us at the new social environment. Joshua, Chloe, Magali, I can surmise that doing this day in and day out is a long durational feat unto itself. So huge, huge thanks. And Eugenie, not just to fly on to the love, but let me do that. Eugenie, you also are one of my heroes, and it has been a great joy to be able to work with you, Eugenie, not just on the new social environment, but for other projects as well. Is a great honor.
Oh,
And yeah, sorry, Eugenie.
no, no, thank you so much. That's very kind.
Yeah, of course. And so I serve as VP of External Affairs and General Counsel at Powerhouse Arts. I have now been here for a little bit over a year. And I have to say, it sort of feels a little bit more like 5 years, like sort of the time and space continuum at Powerhouse Arts is also very truncated. I help run the nonprofit tax exempt legal side of the institution to ensure that Powerhouse Arts complies with its legal rules because it is a nonprofit under the US federal tax rules. But in addition to that, I also get to do a little bit of project management, helping Eric and the rest of the team think through strategic issues as Powerhouse figures out how it can fill its large space, as Eugenie and Eric pointed out, but how it can fill its large space in a way that truly supports artists. Back to you, Eugenie.
Okay, well, let's talk about supporting artists and exactly what Powerhouse does. This is the Grand Hall, I think it's called. That's where the event I attended was, and I just my jaw dropped when I walked in there. But Powerhouse didn't just spring up overnight, even though this was my first time visiting. So I found myself wondering, well, what goes on in here? This is a vast industrial space, and it was clearly a historical building. So could the two of you, talk a little bit about the history of the building and what exactly Powerhouse focuses on? I mean, I found myself thinking, is this an exhibition space? Are there artist residencies here? You've mentioned helping artists, so it's obviously very artist centric. So, yes, love to hear more.
Absolutely. And it is all of those things and more. And it has been very long in development. So it really dates back to, well, let's start with the very beginning. The building itself dates back to the early 20th century when it was built as one of the first big power plants in New York City. And it literally powered the Brooklyn trolley car system and served in that capacity for many decades and eventually powered the Brooklyn subway system until it started to become obsolete in the 1950s. And it then had many other lives. It was an incinerator. It was a storage facility, and because of the breadth and scale of this former turbine hall, there was a lot of space to fill. In the 1970s, it went abandoned and sat empty for over 40 years before it
Wow.
was purchased in 2012 by our founder, the philanthropist Josh Recknitz. And Josh, who is an artist and a collector, and a great lover of art in all of its forms, was hanging out in Gowanus quite often because a lot of his friends had studios in Gowanus. And I think those of us in New York also spent a lot of time in Gowanus as it was so filled with artist studios back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. And Josh, in 2012, was walking down the street one evening and saw the building and said, "What is this?" And I'm sure we should make note of its other life when it was known as the Bat Cave. And in the 90s and the early 2000s, we had upwards of 50 artists living and squatting in the building, many of whom were street artists. And luckily, they left their marks while they were there. So all of our interior walls of the original building
Mm-hmm.
are covered with their graffiti. And I'm
Oh, okay.
so
Yeah, I see that. Okay.
happy that the architects decided to keep it because not only does it provide the history of the place, but also it really echoes the aesthetics of New York, where graffiti and street art is so central to what we know as art in our fair city. But back to the origin story in brief, Josh literally broke in that night and the boarding had been builded up. He broke in with some friends and a flashlight and they looked around and he was so inspired by the scale of the space that he decided he would investigate purchasing the property and doing something with it to help artists. And at first, he thought that that would be artist studio space because in this very large former turbine hall, he realized that they could fit probably about 200 studio spaces into the building. And he would have either given those away for free or at very nicely subsidized rent. And after doing all of the initial design work and the budgeting, and also realizing that the site was a brownfield and that the first order of business would be a remediation project, which in the end ended up taking 2.5 years and a $20 million investment just to clean the property and make it safe for whatever would come later. He realized that he would be spending tens of millions of dollars to build 200 artist studio spaces. And he really woke up and one day and said, wait, I want this to help thousands, if not tens of thousands of artists. And he went back to the drawing board, if you will, and he invited many of his artist friends to serve on an advisory council to help him envision what this place could be. And I think it's important that we note that back in that time frame, 2013 or so, there was already worry in the neighborhood that was filled with small fabrication shops, workshops, and artist studios, as many tenants were seeing their rents start to increase. Also, the Bloomberg administration was talking at that time about rezoning the neighborhood and taking it from being an industrial neighborhood and converting it into a residential neighborhood. So a lot of people started to see the writing on the wall that if those things happened, that artists, workshops, fabricators would be displaced. And they started to think about what would New York City be without a place for artists to work, to think, to create, and to have their work made with professionals in a safe, clean, and affordable space. So all of a sudden, they started to focus on that and decided to turn it into a large-scale art fabrication facility. There was an architectural design competition. Josh invited his 3 favorite architects to submit proposals. Those were Annabelle Seldorf, Deborah Burke, and Herzog Demeron.
Whoa.
And 3 powerhouse architects, all of whom submitted incredible proposals. And he just happened to like Herzog and Demeron's design the most, in that it kept a very industrial vibe. It was very clean and sleek with its cast concrete and cinder block as 2 of the central elements of the design process, and that it was also incredibly functional. So they decided to move forward with that plan. Construction took about 6 years and wrapped in the fall of 2022, and we were very proud to open to the public in May of 2023. And I'll now hand it over to Yayoi to tell you a little bit about what we do now inside of these really beautiful walls.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Eric. And again, so as Eric eloquently described, Powerhouse Arts has had a long history, her story, their story already. And I think for us, it's really important to say, we are not coming in to try to make something new. We are, of course, trying to be a unique model for artists, but we always want to be cognizant and honor the fact that artists, creators, manufacturers have always been in Gowanus, Brooklyn, and we honor that history a lot, and it's important for us to remain a part of that history. Now, what do? We are a 170,000 square foot nonprofit fabrication facility. We have expertise, meaning state-of-the-art equipment, as well as expert fabricators in ceramics, print, digital print, and public art, large-scale site-specific art. We also have membership studios in clay, so ceramics. We have a ceramics membership studio, as well as a relatively new print community studio with specialty in things like lithography and etching. And again, for us, it is first and foremost a place of cultural production. But as Eugenie mentioned, we are also a place where people can come and enjoy culture as well. And that includes things like our Performing Arts Festival, Powerhouse International, which is happening at the moment. I think what you're seeing on the Brooklyn Rail screen at the moment is an image from William Kentridge's Waiting for Civil opera, which took place earlier this fall. and our Performing Arts Festival is still ongoing. And we also produce our own fairs, also, as Eugenie pointed out. And I think Eugenie kindly visited the print fair, I think, which was in March of this year. We have a print fair as well as a contemporary art fair of the global majority. We are continuing with those fairs in 2026, our second inaugural print fair, which will feature print studios, print galleries, as well as artists and art school students who are focused in print. That will be in mid-April of next year. And then our contemporary art fair of the global majority called Conductor, which features artists, galleries, and collectives from the global majority. We will be doing a full-fledged fair called Conductor in I guess that's late April, early May of next year. And what you're seeing on the Brooklyn Rail screen right now is the preview of Conductor, which took place earlier this year.
Oh, thank you both. So in terms of fabrication, I was so curious about Powerhouse. And recently, I was fortunate to go on a walkthrough with Yayoi. And I was really, again, just, New Yorkers are so obsessed with real estate. And so I was so blown away by the spaces and by all of the things, the different kinds of fabrication that take place at Powerhouse. Ceramics, printmaking. The printmaking studio had the largest press I've ever seen. I felt that it was almost the size of a studio apartment.
Yeah.
There was a space on the first floor which was devoted to what you call public art, but I think you mean art more like art that lives outdoors, not necessarily art that's funded by public funding, but art that lives outdoors. And there was this amazing piece made from suitcases, a big tower of suitcases. And then maybe a month later or something I was at the shed at the open call show. And I went on the plaza and there was that piece. And I was like, I believe I just saw that at Powerhouse. So I'm wondering how you, one, decided what kinds of fabrication to include, and also how these separate shops run. Are they like co-ops run by, are you kind of the landlord for all of these people who rent the space and then they run their own businesses and they might have been in Gowanus before? Or how does that work, and how have you decided what you can fabricate?
Yeah.
And is there anything you'd like to add that you think is missing?
Well, that is a really great place to start because, as you see here, this is our digital print lab, and that is one of the largest printers probably in the entire Northeast of the United States. It's called a Swiss Q printer, and it's a UV printer. It can print on anything from wood and glass and marble to paper to canvas, you name it. And it does an indelible UV ink that is sealed immediately upon it being laid out with a heating device. And it really becomes permanent and indelible to its surface. And very rarely do artists have access to equipment like this. And as you said, our screen printing department also plays host to massive printers, and we can create massive screens for screen printing, as big as 8 feet by 10 feet in some cases. And we thought about this very carefully to make sure that we had the space to have equipment at this scale, knowing that artists do indeed make very large things, just as they make small things. And the great thing when you have a big piece of equipment, it's very easy to scale it down and make something smaller. But we wanted to make sure that we had the space, the ceiling heights, etc., to accommodate all of these really specialized pieces of equipment that artists normally have to really be creative to get access to. So that is, very central to our recipe of how we support fabrication projects. I should also note that well beyond the equipment, it takes a team of absolutely wonderful, qualified, specialized artists to make this happen. So our team, which is now over 100 people, is populated by so many wonderful artists, each with their own process, their own practice, and they bring their best to work every day. They have very specialized skills in things like embroidery, different types of printmaking, different techniques in terms of surface finishes, different techniques in textile methodology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And about 70% of our team members would self-identify as being an artist. So we're really happy to be able to give really great jobs to so many artists. It's just one more way to support artists. And here you see our welding shop where we do very large scale metal projects. We run all of these shops in response to your question, Eugenie, and all of those team members are our employees.
Okay.
We do have a few other models as well. So Workspace 11, which is our only commercial tenant, is a wonderful metal fabrication shop. They do both sculpture and architectural metalwork, things like casement windows, railings, but they also do armatures, support structures, bases, framing, things like that. And we rent this space to them on our ground floor, but we work together in a very seamless way. Josh, when he was envisioning this building, started to liken it to a beehive. And he loved the idea of the artists and the workers being the bees and buzzing around this very large hive and really sharing, collaborating, and in essence, cross-pollinating and starting to share ideas, share techniques. And we see that happening in real time. And we also see artists who come in maybe to make a print, all of a sudden end up fabricating in something in ceramics, for example. So that's been really fun to see how this hybridization of making is happening in real time under our roof. The other two models that we have, and then I'll hand over to Yayoi, we also have been very fortunate to work with two really wonderful decades old nonprofits in New York that we were able to welcome into our space as collaborators, as partners, and soon to be full parts of our nonprofit organization. And I'll let Yayoi tell you a little bit about those two shops.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. So the two shops, two organizations that Eric was talking about is Manhattan Graphic Center and the Alpha Workshops. Both of these are nonprofits that have storied history, her story, their stories. They've been in existence for many, many decades. In fact, Manhattan Graphic Center next year will be in its 40th year of being in existence. Manhattan Graphic Center was a print shop based in Manhattan where they provided equipment in print and taught classes, taught workshops for artists to come and work. Now they find themselves up in the 5th floor of our institution as MGC Community Print Studio. They have now been open for about 2 months. So for those of you who are based in Gowanus, Brooklyn or close to Brooklyn and who have interest or who work in print and who are looking for a place to work, please consider looking us up online and maybe coming to us for a tour. So that's MGC Community Print Studio. And then the Alpha Workshops. The Alpha Workshops also used to be in Manhattan, and they first became a workforce development program for people with HIV/AIDS and other disabilities. Their materiality focus is textiles. So they make beautiful hand block printed wallpaper, for example. We also have a master weaver loomer who makes beautiful textile works as well. They also now find themselves up in the 5th floor, actually next to MGC Community Print Studio. And really, again, our goal is to find, from a nerdy legal perspective, for us, it's very important for us to find legal integration between the nonprofits. So MGC coming in as part and parcel of Powerhouse Arts. Alpha Workshops also coming in as part and parcel of Powerhouse Arts as well, so that we really are a big work family. The final thing I will also say about our incredible team And again, some of this comes from our founders' wishes to have state-of-the-art equipment, state-of-the-art access to incredible expertise. Is that for me, it gets me so excited that not only do I see artists coming through our doors, but our team is expert fabricators as well. In Japanese, there's this term called takumi, and it's a term for expert fabricator, craftsperson, artisanal person, somebody who is deep within their craft and has deep subject matter expertise. And it's a great honor that I get to work with some incredible takumi in print, digital print, ceramics, what have you.
Thanks for that. Wow. So let's say I'm a famous artist and I want to use make a print very, very large on that amazing printer. You can tell I'm obsessed with that printer. I mean, how does that process work? Because I'm curious about how that process works. And then what if I just live in the neighborhood and I'm kind of interested in, learning how to throw a pot or something. Like, are there opportunities, for the really well-known and for novices? Like, and can you explain who would find a home here at Powerhouse?
Absolutely. And we are home to all artists at all points in their career. And we want to make sure that we're bringing those that are just starting out, those that have been in the game for a while, and those that have, really achieved fame within this world of ours to come together, because we're ultimately building a community of artists. And I always want to make note that being an artist is so oftentimes a very lonely pursuit. It's you facing your materiality, facing your process, working things out in your head, and bringing those things to life. And as one goes on, and should economic success come in, oftentimes artists are able to hire studio assistants, etc. We try to make that even easier for any artist, in that we're literally providing studio assistants in the form of collaborators in terms of fabrication. We make the process very easy. Any artist can go to our website and fill out a very simple form, just jotting out the parameters of what any project they might want to see happen, what that would look like, what it would entail, what do you want to achieve. We then matchmake with the person on our team that seems like they would be the best point person for this project. And there's then a consultation. The team member then decides if any other team members should be a part of the dialogue. And in fairly short order, we come up with a timeline and a budget. And then, as long as all parties are happy to move forward, we move forward, put it into the pipeline, and start to schedule the project. Right now, our shops are generally booked out anywhere from a month to 3 months in advance, depending on the shop. We always make sure there's a little bit of room in there for emergency projects. But we try to make that intake process very, very easy and accommodating. And we always want to be there for artists in other ways, well beyond fabrication. So for example, right now you're seeing ceramic beans that we made with a really great Dutch artist named Jasper Udentenkata. And that's what they look like finished, based on real beans, but each one is a unique object, which I should note is also available for sale in our new beta version store. But we're really working with artists just to figure out, how do you make something, how long is it going to take, and what is that project going to look like? So I should just finally say, we don't make any aesthetic discernment judgments in looking at potential clients to work with. So we're working with artists of all stripes and persuasions. And yes, we're very fortunate to be working with some of the greats, but we're also equally excited to work with folks that are just starting off.
I would also add to that sometimes artists think they know what they want to actualize a project. And then other times people come in with more just ideas where they're not particularly sure like which materiality could best support them. And I think that discovery process does happen through tours, through somebody writing into our project inquiry form, but then coming in for a tour, having a chance to speak to some of our shop directors, having a chance to take a tour with people like Eric or myself, really sort of being like, let's see what is actually happening in this Batcave once you come in. And then from there, sometimes I find that artists are inspired to further actualize or refine their ideas in maybe ways that they didn't think about before they visited. So that's on the fabrication side of things. And then just to reflect a little bit on the fact that we are trying to support artists at all levels of their journey, whether they are already fully established with very specific ideas about how they want to actualize their work, all the way to somebody who's really just potentially starting out. In terms of that part, we have classes, we have public programs, we have hands-on workshops where people can start to experiment with the idea of actualization. Because for us, at the end of the day, we do believe that everybody has the opportunity to be a creative person, and we want to support that creative expression at whatever level of journey they happen to be at.
Yeah, absolutely. And for our neighbors and for folks that want to get their hands dirty, we have a lot of opportunity there as well. So every May, at the end of May, we do a large-scale community day where we not only set up our own workstations and our materials, but we also invite other fabricators in the neighborhood to come over and show off what they can do so that our visitors get to participate and make something in clay or make a print or see how a stained glass window is made, things like that. And we've also just started a new program in our lobby on Saturday afternoons, and it's called Crafternoons. And folks can come in and learn how to make something. Right now we're doing theatrical dioramas, for example, but there'll be lots of other fun projects to come. So stay tuned for that, because we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to explore creativity and to be an artist, whether it's for an afternoon or for a lifetime.
So you're kind of a neighborhood place, a neighborhood hub, and then you work with artists who are globally active, and so you've got your territory covered.
I hope so in many
Yeah.
ways. We're always open to more, of course. And I should also note that we're in many schools in Brooklyn doing hands-on making exercises with mostly high school students. And we also this year started doing on-site workshops at the 5 NYCHA public housing complexes that are all within walking distance of us, 3 in Gowanus and 2 in Red Hook. So we're
Wow.
there doing art as well.
So who on your staff does that? I mean, I don't know how, I know you have your shops, which are filled with artists and who work with other artists. And but I don't see, I'm just kind of curious about who
Yeah.
goes out to the schools. Do you have another education staff or?
Yeah, we have a wonderful team of 3, Jen, Jackie, and Vina. And they're really wonderful in coming up with programmatic ideas and activities. And we're also really happy that Dia Vidge, the incredible curator, just
Yay.
joined us literally 3 weeks ago as our first inaugural Vice President of Curatorial and Arts Programs. And Jen, Jackie, and Vina are now reporting into Dia, and I'm sure together they're going to come up with even more wonderful ways to share art and the way that it is made.
Oh, that's amazing. I know you've recently started doing programming and the fairs. When I first learned about that, I was wondering how that fit with the mission, the kind of artist-oriented mission of Powerhouse. And I thought, well, wow, this is kind of going off into maybe a slightly more commercial, not so much the perform, well, maybe a more commercial direction. And yeah, can you talk about how that fits with your mission or how yeah, I'm just curious because it did
Sure.
seem to me like a departure.
It's definitely something, again, how do you support artists in all ways? And I have always been a very big proponent of artists having resources and having money to do what they need to do. I think a lot of that stems from my many years at the Warhol Museum and the fact that Andy Warhol saw absolutely no line between art and business. For
Okay.
him, they were one and the same, and
Hmm.
boy, did he ever run with that. And obviously became incredibly successful, world famous, and yes, wealthy. But for a regular everyday artist, I have always wanted to try to figure out how do you get as much cash into an artist's pocket as you can. And as a nonprofit, it is perfectly acceptable and okay to sell art and to support your programs and your work in that way. And Yayoi can tell a little bit more about that from the legal side of how a nonprofit navigates these things. But the sale of artwork is also an opportunity to teach people about how artwork is made, by whom it is made, and about materiality and all of those other fun things. So our retail, our art fairs, and other things that we will introduce in due course are really not about being a commercial organization, but it's about getting resources into our community members' pockets so that they can do even more. Yayoi, do you want to dig into that a little deeper?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And I think we already mentioned for us, Powerhouse, our first and foremost mission from a nonprofit perspective is to be committed to creative expression. And what that means for us particularly is to be like, we would like to support artists from A to Z, meaning like A from the ideation to actualization, all the way to helping that artwork land with a collector, land in somebody's home. For that to support the artist's entire journey is what is most important, rather than us being like, this part is nonprofit-y or this part is for-profit-y. I think from a philosophical perspective, I personally do think that the nonprofit model in the United States currently is unfortunately a little bit broken. And I think it is time for us to figure out alternative ways in which we can actually support our audiences, which is why we think about doing our print fair, conductor, other types of things like the Performing Arts Festival. All of that, yes, may seem like it has a commercial side to it, but it actually just allows for people to understand that there are people who make this work. It's possible to enjoy it. It's possible to bring it home as well. So it really completes the picture.
Yes, yeah. And over and above that, we have very carefully and strategically built our business models to share the wealth, if you will, with participants and with artists and with galleries and even with collectors. And the way we've been able to do that by owning and operating these vast spaces, we realized pretty quickly in modeling out the art fairs that we could pass the savings on to the participating artists and galleries. Normally, art fair booths generally start around the $14,000 or $15,000 bracket for most mainstream art fairs. And the great bulk of that expense is because of the rental fees that the fair has to pay to the venue.
Right.
So in renting out a massive venue, it is a very expensive undertaking. When you own the building, we were able to take that out of the equation. So we started modeling and looked at what would it be like if our booth prices started at around $2,500 and capped out at about $14,000 for a large booth, so that our largest booth was the price of a small booth at another fair. What that does is opens this world up to galleries and to artists that otherwise wouldn't either be able to afford to do a fair and or wouldn't participate because of that challenge. So that opens up a new entry point for galleries and artists to participate in fairs. What that then in turn does is allow those galleries and artists to sell works that are lower priced than what we see at most fairs, because a commercial gallery has to sell expensive artwork just to underwrite the booth rental fee. So that in turn allows young collectors, new collectors to have access to buying artwork. And for us, that happened in real life at the print fair. We had 40 some galleries and 20 something artists who had their own tables. And the price range at the fair was literally $20 at some of the undergraduate art program booths, all the way up to, I think, $55,000 for Good Timing, a William Kentridge print that we featured at the fair. So there was literally something for everybody. And we really like this new economic model as a way to invite folks to New York that otherwise wouldn't be here. And that's how we came up with the idea of the Conductor Fair in partnership with Adriana Ferrietta, sorry, the wonderful former deputy director of the Armory Show.
Right, right.
And it was the same thinking. How do we get galleries and artists from regions of the world that don't normally participate here to New York in a way that they can afford it and make sense of it?
Wow.
Just to add one more thing to that part of that complicated puzzle is that if it is possible for the supply to keep their entry costs low, meaning it's like easier for galleries to be like, oh, I'm going to figure I can in fact put it in my budget to come to this fair, to bring property to this fair, to bring staffing to this fair. We can also, on the other side, keep the ticket prices for fair entrance to be really low too, because at the end of the day, we're saying we want people to be able to feel like they are going to be able to have a sense of discovery. So it's not a $60 ticket to go to a fair, it's in fact $15. And it provides, I think, sort of a lower barrier to economic entry on both sides.
Yeah. And we were really excited that 7,500 people chose to join us for the first print fair.
For 3 days, I guess, 3 to 4 days.
4 days, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really does sound like a new model and a much needed model. I mean, I'm just trying to, racking my brain right now thinking, oh, is there anything else like it? And nothing really comes to mind. But I am always, I mean, after hearing that, I'm even more struck by the level of ambition and your artistic vision. And it all sounds, I'm seeing dollar signs just floating in front of my eyes. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about the economic model of this. How can you fund all of this and stay solvent?
Yeah.
What's the secret?
Like everything we do, it's incredibly complex. And we always want to make note that our founding family made such a major investment in this project to really provide this as a resource to artists. So it's one of the biggest gifts our city has ever seen. To date, the family has invested about $250 million into this project as seed money
over the course of a long time, of course.
Yeah, and to get it built and to get it operating and all of those things. And I think like many family foundations and like many institutions, they want to see it be independent and self-sufficient. And when we think about how our major cultural institutions like MoMA, the Whitney, the Guggenheim, all started with one family's vision and one family's investment, over years and decades, they became part of the public realm and they became celebrated and supported by many others in both traditional and innovative ways. And that's where we are right now. We're in that transition phase of going from being a sole funder organization to branching out and figuring out what streams of revenue we can build so that we can become a self-supporting institution in the next few years. And that's what the team and I work on every day, is what that bridge looks like. And luckily, there were also some mechanics involving a tax credit from New York State that was part of the remediation project. Another couple of things that we've been working on, and also upcoming charity fundraisers, auctions, etc., that will allow us to have the funds to get through this transition phase. In addition to all of the great revenue that our fabrication departments are bringing in already, our development department is bringing in already, and all of those things combined, we have a pathway to a self-sustainable future and hopefully the next 5 to 8 years.
Okay.
And that pathway, I think, is in some ways always changing as well, because as I pointed out, I do think the model of funding nonprofits in the United States, at least currently at the federal administration level, is totally broken. I would be remiss not to point out that big elephant in the room, that it's very difficult for not-for-profits right now, art and cultural venues, educational venues, to rely on public funding. And so we also at Powerhouse also have to think about that as well. How do we think about receiving traditional, non-traditional forms of funding how can we find ways in which our individual projects and individual shops and business lines continue to find ways to not only provide state-of-the-art fee for services, but at below market levels to ensure that we can continue to serve our audiences. It's actually sort of a really, really complicated puzzle. And we are, in some ways, I think we do have to retain the ethos of a startup where we are moving quickly, making decisions, really sort of trying to be in alignment, and then pivoting as necessary as we continue to reach our audiences, figure out what our audiences need. So I would say in some ways, while we are very much a not-for-profit model from a legal and tax-exempt purpose, I think our ethos is a little bit more quicker. We're quick on our feet. We're really trying to make this happen.
Yeah, it sounds entrepreneurial, more entrepreneurial in the best sense of the word, just being nimble, quick, kind of responding to, the circumstances, and definitely kind of setting a new course, modeling something new that other organizations maybe can follow in some way in their own distinct way. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. You're in Gowanus. I know it's a super fun site. It's also kind of one of the art centers in the metropolitan area. So, and you mentioned your outreach to NYCHA housing and you work with schools. Can you just comment a little further on some of your collaborations with your neighbors, both in Gowanus, in the borough, in the metropolitan area?
It's so
It seems like
important.
you have a very collaborative ethos. I'm just curious to see.
100%.
Yeah.
And, both Yayoi and I have spent our entire careers building strong collaborations. And, we both approach this from a place of sharing and lifting up all ships. And I wish that were the case with many other colleagues in the art world, but we know that is not reality. But we always want to make sure that our doors are open and our minds are open to other ideas and working with others. And we do so in so many ways. So every year we take part in Gowanus Open Studios that's run by the great nonprofit Arts Gowanus, which has over 400 artist members who have either studios or practices in our neighborhood. As I said, we're in many of the schools, we're in many of the NYCHA residences, and we partner with a lot of other institutes in the neighborhood, like the Van Allen Institute. We just played host to an installation by an artist that received support from Van Allen, and Tiffany Baker is her name, and she did an installation in our lobby as an artist that was about the reality of the neighborhood and its rising water and flood conditions, which is something the entire neighborhood has to navigate together. So we're always thinking about what we can do with the neighborhood. Our next chapter is to really start to figure out how to build out a workforce development program that will focus on young adults living in the 5 NYCHA residences in our neighborhood. And that comes from direct conversations with the tenant association leadership in the houses who have asked us outright, could you figure out a way to help with job training for our young adults? And we realized that yes, indeed, we could. So we're in conversations with foundations, private companies, city and state agencies to build a hands-on workforce development training program
Oh, wow.
under our roof. It's a very heavy lift, but it's something that we're really committed to doing because we know that we can, and also that we know that the art world needs it, so that we're training skilled technicians and makers who are not coming from traditional art school backgrounds, but coming from our neighborhoods. And that's really, really important to us. So stay tuned. We hope to get that rolling in due course.
Wow.
I would add also that I think for us in our spirit of collaboration, we do not want to be seen as a sign of gentrification in the neighborhood. We want to be a part of the neighborhood that celebrates the history, her story, their story, and making that has always happened in Gowanus. Eugenie, you kindly visited, I think, this past summer, or you maybe came like July or August. And you probably saw that the neighborhood is fast changing in terms of the number of residential buildings.
So many buildings.
all around the canal. And again, there are pluses and minuses to that. And I would say from an administration perspective, the City of Yes legislation has ensured that private real estate developers are required to have affordable housing, a percentage of each of their units to be dedicated to truly affordable housing, like $600, $800 studios a month kind of thing, not like a $3,000 a month studio. And so we are committed to ensuring that the neighborhood remains a friendly place for all types of people to be able to live and work. And we also believe that part of that is a social policy situation where we have to ensure that, that there is affordable housing, not just for artists and arts workers, but affordable housing across the board. And that keeps a neighborhood vibrant and diverse. And that is very important to us too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. My last question was, you've already touched on so many things, but of course, is the hopes and dreams for the next 5, 10 years. I don't know if that was so comprehensive. I don't know if you have any further thoughts, but you both strike me as extremely creative and forward thinking. So maybe, yeah, what do you think?
Thank you. And we try to be pragmatic as well in making this a reality. And as we've been building this and as it has all been coming together and getting constant feedback, listening to people, what we're hearing again and again that is that people that come into our space feel that it's authentic. They feel welcomed and they feel that art is the central heartbeat of the place and artists are the lifeblood. And that gives us so much joy to see and hear that what we're doing is landing for people. And also, very recently, we've started to realize that we're actually building a new kind of cultural organization that is something like an art factory or a studio crashing into a Kunsthalle or a museum, and that we're becoming a site of both artistic production, just as we're becoming a site for artistic consumption.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also I'm always pretty much ruined by Andy Warhol in the way that I think. And that's what Andy
And he's so
Warhol's
prescient.
he was, and it worked for him. But thinking about the Silver Factory,
Mm-hmm.
it was almost the same thing. It was a site where Andy literally fabricated and made his paintings and his sculptures and everything else and the films. But it was also a place that welcomed people from all walks of life in. And Andy was really great at bringing the high and the low together and bringing people from different walks of life together and different creatives together. And combined, they were literally creating culture there in the factory on East 47th Street. And I think that we have the ability to do that too in really new and exciting ways. And as we start to realize that that's possible and it is something that is very needed, I think it drives all of us to keep going and to make this something the world has never seen before, hopefully to very exciting ends.
And I have some more immediate hopes and dreams. So we are always here, meaning we are always at Gowanus, Brooklyn. We're always open for tours. If any of you all are like, I would like to see how your fabrication facilities work, or I want to visit, please keep us in mind. We have open doors. Please visit us. Powerhouse International, our Performing Arts Festival, is still ongoing. We're moving into the music portion of the offerings. This weekend, November 22nd, we are featuring Claire Rousset, who is an artist, a musician, a composer. She's creating emotive sound works. She will be presenting her work with a live band. And that's in connection with Fall of Freedom, which is a decentralized collective of arts organizations like museums, galleries, libraries, performing arts venues, each of these organizations coming together to celebrate artistic practice and culture with artists standing up against authoritarianism. We are doing Claire Rousset in connection with Fall of Freedom. Powerhouse Arts is one of the organizers of this decentralized collective. So if you are available this weekend, please come on out. And in fact, A little plug for Brooklyn Rail. Brooklyn Rail is also kindly participating in Fall of Freedom. They are doing a reading during tomorrow's New Social Environment, so a plug to Joshua's team there. My understanding is Erica Hunt, Marcella Durant, Tanya M. Foster, and Selena Sue will be doing poetry readings and discussing poetry as a form of resistance.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think just in closing, we should probably let everybody know that there are going to be a lot of new opportunities to come and visit us. In the next year, we start exhibitions, and we're really excited to see how contemporary art, is installed and able to be viewed and seen in these wonderful spaces of ours.
Amazing.
So stay tuned. Our first big exhibition will open in June of next year, and we'll be announcing what that is in the weeks and months ahead. And it'll be yet another opportunity for folks to come in and experience great art in ways that they might not quite be used to.
Wow. Okay. Thank you both for that very
Thank you.
edifying presentation. I'm totally on board. So excited by what you're doing there on Gowanus at Powerhouse Arts.
Thank you.
And I think it's now time for some questions.
Yes, thank you both so much. Thank you also so much for such an energizing conversation and covering so many different aspects of Powerhouse Arts. We have some questions here ready to go. And so I'm going to allow Zena. Zena has our first question. I'm going to go ahead and allow you to unmute, Zena.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yep. Hi.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Are you on a train?
I am.
Cool.
I'm on a train from Vermont, but I did really want to tune in for this conversation because I've also wondered and inquired about just how you all are envisioning this really exciting space. I think I wrote my question, but I'll also just ask it here is I think especially given the fact that you guys are now thinking about what exhibitions can look like for the location and the site, how is that in conversation with alongside all of the fabrication that's happening, right? This is
Yeah.
a really unique alignment that I'm sure influences the curatorial vision in dynamic and interesting ways.
1,000%.
And also, hi, Eugenie, who is my former colleague. I wanted to
Yay.
say hello from the Brooklyn Museum. This is really awesome. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. And, when you have an art making factory, it all of a sudden opens up so many other opportunities for what types of installations and exhibitions you can do. And that's why we were really focused on bringing in a phenomenal curator to help lead the charge and help us to determine what that's going to look like. And Dia, who just started 3 weeks ago, coming from the most amazing organization, Creative Time, as their chief curator, has the track record of making really large scale, cool things happen in our city and well beyond. And, she's going to really be looking into that to see like, what can we do in the space and how do we bring in our fabricators, our team members, to make really magical things happen. So stay tuned. I know she has a lot of really great ideas.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for that question, and thank you for that answer, Eric. Our next question is going to come from Jennifer. Jennifer, I'll go ahead and give you a button to unmute here.
Hello, thank you all for the space they're providing. Yeah, I'm a Brooklyn resident and remember seeing that building when it was the Batcave and always wondering, dreaming like, wow, what that could be for artists. And so you did it, and thank you. My background is in arts education and exhibition design, and so my question, I think you've answered some of it. I wanted to ask a little bit more about the public arts projects. How is it connected? How do you find partners and what the process is? But some of that you've answered, and so you mentioned something about future exhibitions. So I'm also kind of curious about that since that's
Yeah. And our public art department is it's so much more than just a public art department because they're ultimately making large scale sculptures, installations, working with museums, working with galleries, working with artists. And it's been really fun working with other nonprofits in the city, like the Shed on Victor Quinones's pyramid that Eugenie started off talking about, through to working with Creative Time and the High Line and the Brooklyn Museum and so many other great organizations on, making really big projects come to life. And when Victor Quinones, who did the pyramid at the Shed, came to us, he literally had a little 3D printed model of the pyramid. And he said, how do I make this large scale? And that's what our teams excel at, brainstorming with artists to figure out how to make something happen. And that involves engineering and making sure that things like wind shear are thought of, and the materiality, and how to paint, and how to install, how to make sure it can come apart so it can travel. And all of our shops are really, really good at innovating. And we never say no to artists either. We figure it out. Like, it might not be what everybody thought it was going to be at the beginning, but we'll get there. And I think a lot of fabricators sort of are in the way of the way things have always been done. We're always thinking about how things could be done and can be done. So that's something that we're always really approaching. And we're also looking at other collaborations in Brooklyn where public art can play a new role, especially in a new developing neighborhood. So stay tuned. There are a couple of things on deck there too. And we're really just starting to think more about how public art, very sadly, often is a one-act play. One very big thing is built somewhere, it's shown, and then there's no place for it to go after that. So once we're done getting all of that other stuff dealt with, one day we really want to look at, could there be a national network of nonprofits that play host to these really wonderful projects so that they don't end up in a dumpster, which is so sadly often the case.
To also reflect on what both Zena and Jennifer were asking about, I think what does make Powerhouse, I think, very different, and in a way sort of an interesting puzzle to continue to work on, is how do we both provide a space for making, for expert fabrication, for production to happen, while at the same time ensuring that people can come enjoy some of what is being made here. Not always 100%, but some, right? The sense of like the makers and fabricators and artists are over here, the public and potentially a large public is out here. How do we try to make that a little bit more porous for these communities to intersect and interact in ways that are thoughtful? It is part and parcel, I think, of the spirit of like why we're here to try to make this happen. And it's an interesting puzzle because I think not every institution has the capacity or has the history, her story, their story to do that.
Yeah. And building on that, we're very much about tearing down the elitism of the art world. And that's always the elephant in the room, right? I think all of us on the team have always realized that art is for everybody, and it should be for everybody. And I also think we have a really unique opportunity to tell the stories of how art is made, why it's made, and by whom it's made, to audiences well beyond museum-going publics. Because the story of art is really intriguing. The story of making is really intriguing. And I think that it is very easily translatable to everyday folks to learn and to see why art is made, and most importantly, how it reflects their lives, their struggles, their realities. So I think there are a lot of fun things we can do on that front as well as we go forth.
Thank you so much for that question, Jennifer, and thank you for those responses. Our next question comes from Susu, and Susu asks, does Powerhouse host conversations like forums to share your workshops and projects? And additionally, do you have a monthly newsletter or catalog to highlight your upcoming projects or the artists/staff who work for Powerhouse?
Absolutely. Everybody can sign up for our monthly newsletter on our website. So just go on. It's very easy to find, plug in your email, and we will happily fill your inbox with lots of exciting things. Our newsletters are getting longer and longer and longer. Sam and Xavier, and who are on our team in marketing, and Ellie Hayworth, who we work with on PR, are very busy pulling all of these things together. But it's a great way to stay in touch with us and to see what we're doing, and also our new programs. So we just launched our first artist residency program, and the residence started a few weeks ago, 3 New York-based artists. and we'll eventually expand it to be a national residency and maybe an international residency as well. But you can learn about our artist subsidy program on our website, which is a way that we literally give work in kind. Well, we basically give credit to work in our shops so that artists that can't afford what we do have access. So dig around on our website. There are lots of really exciting things to see. I see Magli just dropped in the chat the sign up form for the newsletter, and hopefully engage with us that way. Also follow us on Instagram.
Follow us on Instagram. Also on our website, we have a calendar of events as well. We have a robust set of workshops, classes, public programs, many of which are free. Some of the classes are lower cost or sliding scale. So please check us out, and hopefully you can find something that you're excited about.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Our last question today comes from Adrian in the audience, and Adrian writes, great discussion. I'm wondering if you have invited the new mayor to Powerhouse to see to see what amazing things are underway. He seems to have a special interest in the arts and its relationship to communities.
We're so excited by our new mayor, and we cannot wait to welcome him into our walls. He has not yet been, but we're obviously very simpatico. He obviously grew up in an art family and grew up surrounded by art, and he gets it. And he also realizes the need for affordable housing for artists and arts workers in our city so that we keep New York, New York. And I was very honored to offer testimony last week to City Council on that import. And that was picked up in the Gothamist and a couple of other places, but we're very simpatico on that front. And I also think and truly believe that true affordable housing for artists and everybody else that need it is achievable in our city, and it will ultimately keep New York the creative, wonderful place that it is.
Great. Thank you so much for that response, Eric. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Yayoi, who's going to introduce a reading today.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And thank you again, Eugenie, for facilitating and hosting such a wonderful conversation. Thank you to the New Social Environment for having us. And thank you for this wonderful group who's spending time listening in. For the final part of our conversation, I wanted to offer a reading. It's going to be excerpts from artist educator, artist, and artist pedagogy expert Pablo Perguera. They have a Substack called Beautiful Eccentrics that people can sign up for. I wanted to read from some expert excerpts from their post entitled The Shape of Tone. It is against this backdrop that we must think about the task of art. For art, like politics, cannot escape the question of tone. Do we echo the shrillness of the moment, sacrificing reflection for impact? Or do we cultivate a more measured register, one that may appear less forceful, but has the power to sustain thought across divisions? The answer is not obvious, but the urgency of asking it could not be greater. I sometimes wonder if our political reality is like a piano, a vast discordant instrument that can tilt into noise or dissonance at the slightest provocation. And we as artists are less like the performers than the tuners. Our job is not only to play, but to listen, to find the tonal adjustments, however minute, that might make reflection possible, rather than rejection inevitable. Persuasion in this sense is not about overpowering with volume. It is about calibrating tone with the precision of someone listening for resonance in the middle of chaos. I am reminded that we are all playing and tuning at once, trying to teach, to make art, to find the right tone in a world gone discordant. Perhaps the best thing we can do is keep listening for the false notes, for the hidden harmonies, and to keep adjusting until something begins, however briefly, to sound right.
Thank you so, so much for sharing that with us, Yayoi. And thank you, Eugenie, Eric, and Yayoi again for such an amazing, luminous conversation about Powerhouse Arts. We'd also like to thank the Terra Foundation for American Art and Tiger Foundation for sponsoring our NSE program and making these daily conversations possible, and for their support of our growing
Yay.
archive, which you can view on the Rails YouTube channel. The Rail has been free and independent for 25 years. We are raising $200,000 before the end of the year, which provides essential support for our writers, production staff, and operations. Support our work through the link in the chat. And like Yayoi mentioned earlier, join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for Fall of Freedom, a Rail reading curated by Erica Hunt and featuring Marcella Duran, Tanya M. Foster, and Selena Sue for a poetry reading and discussion about poetry as creative resistance. And as is Rail tradition, we now invite you to say hello and goodbye as you leave today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Thank
much,
you.
Yayoi and Eric.
Very well.
Thank you,
Exploring.
Jeannie, for your amazing
Yay.
questions.
Can't wait to see the space.
Oh, hi.
Thank you guys.
Bye,
I'll
everybody.
visit soon.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great. We hope to see everybody soon. Happy
will.
Thanksgiving.
That's a
And
great
don't
thought.
forget Fall of Freedom. Bye.